Hi guys, this is Charlie with Boxing Focus, and part of my series of looking ahead to the super fight between Mayweather and Pacquiao, looking at sparring specifically in terms of preparation for fighting each other. Hot off the press this morning, or perhaps yesterday, Judah is now one of the sparring partners for Floyd Mayweather, which, if I'm in Team Pacquiao and they seem to be reacting this way, it's not something that particularly bothers me. The thing about sparring is when you're sparring, especially when you're sparring for a fight, especially if you know who your opponent is, you use it to work on techniques and recognising different looks from your opponent, so that when it comes to the fight, you're not getting surprised and you're able to fall back on muscle memory to speed up certain reactions and instincts. And this for me is where Pacquiao has a definite advantage going into this fight. It's just the nature of Pacquiao's styles. It's very difficult to replicate. He bounces on his feet in what you might describe as double time. He's very, very quick, and that enables him to shift very quickly and move very, very quickly into different positions. Whereas most guys are kind of much more at slow pace when it comes to shifting their feet and changing their stance and pivoting around their opponent. The reason that it's so difficult to replicate is it requires incredible strength in the legs. It's ridiculous how hard it is to maintain that kind of double time bounce, just even for a few seconds, let alone for over the course of a round or even a 12-round fight. I mean, if you just try bouncing very, very quickly on your feet, you'll find after 30 seconds your legs are in pain. You have to be very, very, very fit and have incredible strong calves to be able to do it for a much longer period like Pacquiao does. Which is why you look at him, you look at his calves whenever he's training or fighting, and they're massive. I mean, it's fairly well known. But it means that Mayweather's going to really struggle to have people replicate what it is that Pacquiao does. Especially the way that he moves as he throws his punches. And it's also part of the reason that Pacquiao's punches are so strong. He's springing into them. He's never really flat-footed. I mean, they talk about sitting down on your punches in boxing. You can get a lot of leverage, especially on hooks when you're sitting down on your punches, but to really get an awful lot of power in your punches, you want extra momentum, so you want to be kind of not jumping into them, but springing a little bit into them. It's why fighters like Golovkin are always so much better when they're on the front foot. It's why you've got to back them up, because if they're allowed to move forward into their punches, it increases the power significantly. And that's one of the things that Pacquiao uses, is this ability to generate extra power on his shots by immediately just bouncing back and forwards into them. On the other hand, Floyd Mayweather's style, whilst it's obviously there's nobody on the planet like Floyd Mayweather, there's thousands of Mayweather wannabes. There's thousands of guys who emulate him, who try and do the things that he does, and thus there's quite a big pool of sparring partners for Pacquiao's team to choose from. Of course, none of them will be as proficient as Floyd Mayweather, but each of them will be able to do certain things pretty well, and Pacquiao will be getting used to a lot of the looks that Mayweather's going to be giving him when they face off in the ring on May the 2nd. So there's a definite edge to Pacquiao in this regard. He will be much better prepared on specific movements in terms of like ducking under the lead rights and countering with a left, or coming over the top of the jab with a right hook. Just kind of basic things that Mayweather's going to really not have had that experience with, because his sparring partners will just move nothing like Pacquiao with the kind of speed that Pacquiao moves. And that means that we're going to see really how good Mayweather's famed ability to make adjustments is. I actually think it's overrated. I think people make too much of a deal out of it. I mean, a great example is, speaking of Zab Judah, the Zab Judah fight with Floyd Mayweather, if you hear a Mayweather fan describe it, it will be, Zab Judah's really effective for 3-4 rounds, then Floyd makes his adjustments and takes over the fight. That's absolutely not what I saw when I watch it back. I see Mayweather walking Judah down, and basically as soon as Judah starts tiring and starts getting a little bit frustrated that he's not hurting Mayweather more with his punches, he just mentally wilts. He's just not that strong a character. I don't think Mayweather really makes that many adjustments at all in that fight. He just keeps on doing what he's doing. And I will concede that some adjustments are going to be more nuanced and subtle than others, and there are a couple of obvious adjustments that he does make. For instance, he's reaching with his right hand when he's trying to do straight rights to the body, and he's getting countered on that, and he stops doing that. But I mean, that's not an incredible adjustment to make. If you're trying a punch and you're getting punished for it, then you stop doing it. I mean, anybody does that the vast majority of guys do that even when they're sparring, let alone in a fight. So I will be curious to see how quickly it takes for Floyd Mayweather to start at least adapting to what Manny Pacquiao's doing, because he won't have that much time. Pacquiao's a fast starter. He's not only a fast starter, he keeps that pace going as well. You look at all the different fights he's been in recently, very few people have come to grips with him early in a fight. I mean, obviously the most obvious example is Marquez. First fight, he's down 3 times in the opening round. Second fight, he's down fairly early in the fight. Third fight, I think both of them are a bit more wary of each other. It's a bit of a non-event. Fourth fight, Pacquiao goes after him to make it a war, and Marquez is feeling strong and stands his ground. That's 4 fights in that Marquez has finally really picked a punch that he thinks is going to do the job for him. Mayweather doesn't have 4 fights; he has 1, and when you say 4 fights, I mean it's not like there were 4 fights back to back. That's 4 fights over nearly a decade. So Marquez has had plenty of time to think about it as well and work on different things in the gym. Mayweather just has this one camp, and he has the likes of Judah and Chop Chop Corley to practice on, who frankly aren't anything close to Pacquiao in terms of the way they move, in terms of the hand speed, especially in terms of the leg strength and their ability to shift their feet and move on the spot. It's a problem for Floyd Mayweather that he just cannot get sparring partners like Manny Pacquiao, and that I think it's going to ultimately lead to him being a lot less prepared than Pacquiao, which is a bit of a disadvantage. Obviously, they'll both be in supreme condition. They'll both be incredibly fit. I mean, as usual, we're always going to hear this. As usual, there's reports of Mayweather knocking out a sparring partner. There'll be reports of Manny Pacquiao decapitating sparring partners, and Floyd Mayweather rearranging sparring partners' faces. But I mean, that's standard. If you've been around boxing long enough, that we hear this anyway from practically every fight, and I'm sure we'll hear as they go into the fight that both guys have had the best training camps of their career. But we can work with what we know, and what we know is Mayweather does not have adequate sparring for Manny Pacquiao because there just isn't anybody like him. Manny Pacquiao will have fair sparring for Floyd Mayweather, in my opinion, and we'll see what difference that makes on fight night. This is Charlie with Boxing Focus.